Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. In our series exploring uncommon stories in the Quran, let's explore the stories of the people of Rus and the people of Yasin. Who were they and what was their journey with and through Islam? As always, let's sit down with Dr. Shabir Ally to gain some valuable lessons and insights from these groups. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Pleasure to be on.
So we're continuing our series of uncommon stories in the Quran, and today we're talking about the people of Rus and Yasin. So let's start with people of Rus. Who were they?
Well, we have little information about them. The Quran mentions them twice, in the 25th chapter and also in the 50th chapter, and just mentions them in passing among a group of people, or as one example of a number of different peoples over time who have rejected the message of God, and as a result of that, God obliterated them. So they're shown to us as examples of what happens if people were to disobey God. These may have been powerful people at one time, but now they're no more. And we should think about the powers of the world today. If we acquire power and might and wealth and fame and all of that, but we refuse God's message to us, and instead of living a wholesome life of peace and goodness with other people, we commit oppression and injustice, then the message of this story is that we might face a similar penalty as those people had.
And do we know any more information that we could piece together from other religious scriptures, or is it sort of limited?
It's limited to the Quranic mention, as far as I can tell. Now, you find books like Stories of the Prophets by Ibn Kathir. You have stories which are mentioned about these people, and some of these stories are mentioned also in the Muslim commentaries on the Quran, classical commentaries like that of Ibn Jarir at-Tabari. And they might mention something like these people of Rus. They are from among the people of Thamud more generally, another people who are mentioned in the Quran, to whom a prophet was sent, whose name is Saleh. And it's mentioned also that a particular prophet came to them whose name was Hanzlah, and these people disobeyed their prophet, and to the extent that they threw him into a well. And the well eventually dried up, as a result of which they could not have enough water to irrigate their crops, and eventually they were left without food, and they died off in this way.
And let's shift a bit now. What about the people of Yasin?
People of Yasin, their story is mentioned a little bit more extensively, and there is a surah of the Quran which is named after them, Surah Yasin, the 36th chapter of the Quran. And their story begins with وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ. Strike for them the similitude of the people of the town or of the village, إِذْ جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ, when the prophets came to them. Now, as the story unfolds here, we find that two prophets came to them, they disobeyed the two prophets, and then God strengthened the two with a third. But despite this, they reneged, they blamed the prophets. They said, God did not reveal anything to you. You're just human beings like us. You're just inventing things. And indeed, if what you're saying is true, bring us whatever punishment might be there. They even said, we feel that some evil thing is connected with you, and if you don't stop your preaching, we will stone you. But the prophets kept protesting and preaching their message, saying that their job is only to convey the message, and they will do that.
What about, obviously it's not complicated, but it's an important lesson. How can we apply this lesson to our daily lives, knowing that, we don't have any prophets within our times now?
Well, there are several lessons to be gained from this story. The one important one is that as the story continues, we see a man who, it appears to be just an ordinary person, but he comes running to the people from the innermost part of the city. He says, اتبعوا المرسلين, follow the messengers. اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. Follow those who are not asking any reward from you, They're not asking for any reward from you, but on the other hand, they are obviously rightly guided. So that's an important thing. First of all, we see here an ordinary person who can rise and preach. So we know that this opens the possibility of lay persons being preachers of the message. Of course, there are some things which only scholars can preach because they have to know what they're talking about. But some things are so basic and obvious, like the fact that there is only one God and the fact that we should listen to the messengers of God. This is so obvious to every Muslim believer that we, as ordinary believers, can give that message ourselves, and we should give that message within our capacity in the right circumstances to the right persons and so on. What is important too is the description of the prophets. The prophets have come from God with a message, and they're not asking for any reward from people for that message. So that tells us something about the purity of the message and our intentions in delivering that. We should not be seeking reward from people. Our reward is only with God, and we should be preaching this message only because we're so convinced that it is true, and we want to sincerely and wholeheartedly offer this to the people.
And do you think moving forward, these are uncommon stories in the Quran, should we be, as by way of this series and by talking about lessons from People of Rus and People of Yassin, are you suggesting or encouraging the average person to go to these stories and, outside of the traditional learning from the life of the Prophet and the Sahabas, is that sort of your ultimate message?
Well, yes, as we read the Quran, inevitably we'll come to this story in the Quran. We'll come to the mention of Rus, we'll come to the mention of Yasin. And naturally we should reflect on these stories. And I mentioned that ordinary person who took up the preaching. Well, God gave him a reward, and it was said to him, Udkhulul Jannah, enter paradise. And he says, Ya layta qawmi ya'lamun, if only my people had known. So his sorrow for his people is important here to notice, and apparently God Himself would have liked for people to embrace the right message and be saved in the hereafter, because the story wraps up with God saying, "Ya hasratan alal ibad." Oh, what a pity for the servants, meaning God's creatures. He's referring to them as His servants, and He would have liked for them to have a beneficial outcome in the life hereafter, but unfortunately they themselves have turned away from the path leading to God's mercy and eternal salvation. So the story is packed with lessons. Yes, the ordinary person should actually pay attention to this as we're reading the Quran.
I think a very holistic conversation as always. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.